Remember, all episodes Memphis in May. Go to stspod.club. Be there. All right. We're live from 304 Studios in Jonesboro, Arkansas. This is an stspod.club production. I'm BT, and right over there, man, where the hell you been? It's Gene Jackson.
I've been waiting on you. I don't know, but I guess maybe I clicked on the wrong link or something.
Man, it's been years, brother. It's been years. It's been actually 2 years. We sat down and released the episode in May the 18th, 2021. You were part of all episodes of Memphis in May, which was the 4th annual, where we did I don't know if you remember this, St. Valentine's Massacre, because it was in Memphis. So we reviewed it and we answered, was it really that good? And that's what we're going to do today. Real quick, let me get over some information and some business. Take a look at Patreon, because today, Gene doesn't even know this yet. But when we go to Patreon, Gene and I are going to talk about something that we never talk about on stspod.club. It's kind of taboo to be talking about this subject, so it should be really fun. And also, subscribe. We got big prize package. It's all Memphis wrestling merchandise. There's a Jerry the King Lawler Funko Pop. There's even a Ric Flair. Remember, he did one of the most awesome angles ever in Memphis. A Ric Flair comic book. All kinds of fun stuff. stspod.club, the right-hand corner, go over there and hit link of all links, subscribe to Patreon, or you could be a Facebook friend. You can do a little bit of everything right there. Gene, are you doing anything wrestling-wise anymore?
Did you get me with one of those? You didn't know I was recording bits again. Kind of, sort of, not really. We've dropped the Cheap Heat podcast for a variety of reasons, but I'm all into stand up now, and I've gotten together with some friends, Delbert Jenkins, Buck Jenkins' cousin, also known as Steve Fleasing in the wrestling world, Wes Sears, a huge wrestling fan and friend of mine from around the area, and Shane Knowles, professional wrestler and longtime promoter of Peach State Wrestling. We have come together and formed Main Event Comedy. We do shows the third Saturday of every month in Anniston. We're starting to branch out and do shows in other places now. But we have converted everything that was previously Cheap Heat TV is now Main Event Comedy. We have a YouTube channel. We have Facebook, as you can see right below my name. And a lot of good stuff coming up there through Main Event Comedy. So please check it out, follow us, and have a laugh or two.
It's really good. I follow you on TikTok and watch the videos there. I try to watch at least every new stuff, the new ones that you put out. My TikTok following is not that good, but I get a ton of response off of Reels. Or YouTube's pretty good too when it comes to the small videos. But I love the idea of being able to just tell a joke, listen to the joke, get on with it, just the same way I do all the other stuff.
We had a reel recently, real quick for you, because you said about reels. We had a reel where me and Delbert and Xanders did commentary over like a really bad Alabama wrestling show, and two guys were trying to do a spot. Not really sure to this day what they were trying to do. But they kept whipping each other back and forth and screwing it up.
I saw that.
That got over 40,000 views. Somebody shared it on the Cult of Cornet and Cult of Kayfabe, and just kept getting shared around. And it's got a few thousand views in 2 or 3 different places. But on the Facebook Reels, last time I checked, it's got like 43,000 views.
You went viral, man. You went viral with that one.
Pretty cool.
I thought that's awesome. Yeah, that's really awesome. It's really scary that we see that many people listening or touching our stuff. It's kind of crazy. And
it's also kind of upsetting that if you put something of bad wrestling, it will get shared around. But you can put, hey, this is the best match I've seen in 2 years of some really talented people on something local. 100 views.
Shit. Very much so. Very much so. All right, we're here today, and we're going to talk about, was it really that good? And I remember this angle with the Snowman. I remember it just being one of those things where you're watching Memphis wrestling, and he walks out, and you're kind of in shock. I mean, the Snowman had been in Memphis before, the Killer, was his gimmick then. And Kenny D, do you know anything about Kenny D? So I actually like Kenny a lot.
I just remember him being around, but that's one of the guys that I've never really, in all my years since of studying all this, I've never really gotten any insight on him of kind of who he was or how he came to be a part of any of it.
I went to one of the old message boards, and no one really had any kind of information even back in the day about him. I always liked Kenny D. He'd say something like, "Don't worry about it," what D stood for and stuff like that. But he
Yeah.
managed the Killer, and who is the Snowman? Killer with the mask, and the Killer actually left Memphis. Did he leave Memphis, then go to Mid South? Did Bill Watts see him then?
I I'm trying to think of what the time frame on the Killer was. I'm thinking Mid South had to have been first because Mid South.
The Killer was 1986. He came in.
Oh yeah, because Snowman and Mid South would have been because his big match
is an 85. Yeah, you're right.
Is an 85 against Jake with Muhammad Ali in his corner and all that jazz. So yeah, it was definitely before.
And so Bill Watts saw this guy, this big muscular black guy, and I'm probably going to delve into this a little bit. There ain't no little bit to it because that's what this whole angle is about. And I want to thank Braino Lasto, who's our Patreon member. He's the one that asked, "What y'all think about the Snowman?" But he saw this big guy, and he was trying to find somebody to take JYD's place, right?
Yeah, there was that whole parade of guys that JYD went to WWF, and Bill Watts is like, we got to have another top black wrestler again, and so they had Duggan, they had some top stars, but he wanted to fill that void, and he tried it with Snowman, he tried it with Brickhouse Brown, and Butch Reed had been too big of a heel there, and Snowman came along, and I mean he was decent, but he was not going to be Junkyard Dog, and especially not in Mid-South New Orleans, and where he had just came from. But he did achieve some notoriety there and got over to some degree, but he wasn't going to be the top draw that JYD.
No. And who was? That was the question. Yeah. I don't think Watts really understood that. He tried to replace JYD with another black wrestler. That's what it was all about. A black wrestler with some charisma, and he's wanting to try to get another black wrestler over. I don't think he understood it. Really, it did have something to do with JYD being black, but not a lot. I mean, I was a huge JYD fan. I talked to Kay Toomer about this. I think JYD was one of those guys. It didn't matter what color he was. He had so many fans from everywhere, and just a huge. And there's not many people like that. So it wasn't going to be so easy to replace him.
I don't think people nowadays can really understand or appreciate, like in the 80s, kind of where things were on, race relations and things like that. But I think he's one of the first, black wrestlers to really transcend. And if you go back and watch, whether you watch Mid-South, Mid-South or WWF or any of that from the time when he come down the aisle, everybody was on their feet. It wasn't just like, hey, all the black fans and a handful of the white fans. Like, no, everybody loved that guy, and he was God in New Orleans, So, yeah, I think he was one of the first, black wrestlers that really, it didn't matter. It was him. It was about him and his charisma, that gimmick, his music, and all that.
Yeah, you wasn't going to replace him with Snowman.
No, and I think fans,
Snowman, but you're not.
Even though there really wasn't smart fans much in that day, I think even those fans at the time, after a couple of tries, they were like, he just wants us to cheer this guy because he's black. Like, he's just trying to fill a void here, and they caught on to it, and I think they kind of rejected it, like you see happen with WWE baby faces in recent years. Like the long time it took them to finally warm up to Roman Reigns. There's those things like, oh, we're not just going to cheer the guy because he's black.
Because you told us to. We're not going to do it.
Yeah, because that's what you want us to do.
That people, and I'm older than you, but people would not understand, especially being from the South. And I know y'all might not be able to see this because you're not watching the video, but Gene and I are white. Gene, I know that's huge shock
Well, if we're
there.
coming out, then yeah,
I am. I
it's
came
not
out as
something I've
white
talked
today.
about or really admitted, but yeah, I mean, if we're just going to out ourselves here on on podcast, yes, I am in
Uh,
fact
and
of the
we
Caucasian
really
persuasion.
I want to say this, Gene. I've said this before in a group of whoever. I do not know the problems that a black male, a black female would go through in the South during the 80s. None of that stuff. I don't know. I understand it to a certain extent, but I can't. Here's the deal. At that point, even me as a kid going to wrestling in the early 80s, I went to a place in Blythe, Arkansas. And the reason I bring this up because I want you, and when we watch this interview in this angle, you're going to know why I keep bringing this up because that's what it's about. It starts out about race. And but when I went to Blythe, there was the ringside seats. There was bleachers, kind of behind the ringside seats, bleachers over here. But there was a section over here for all the black people. They they weren't. I mean, I don't know. They got general admission tickets and they sat over here. They never sat in ringside. They never did anything. Also, at my high school during pep rallies or anything that the parents had to come, there was a section of the gym that only black people sat in.
Yeah.
So did you see a lot of that? And now this is the 80s. This
Oh
is
yeah.
81,
Yeah.
82, 83, 84 during that time.
I grew up in a town with a very large black population. It was almost like they were, segregation wasn't still a literal thing, but it's like they just kind of people kind of stuck to that, and like when I was in high school, like if a black person, a white person dated, it was news all over town. Like it was almost gonna be in the paper that week. Like it was. I mean, people don't realize for all the talk people say about race relations and issues we've had in the last 10 years, it's nothing compared to what it was back then. And so that's because that mindset, especially in the South, was still kind of there, even if it was kind of everybody's own choosing. That's why a guy like Junkyard Dog, who people was just like, reacting to, like you say, from those different sections, they got the same.
Right,
He got the same
right.
reaction from every section. It was pretty amazing to see, and I'm sure for somebody like Watts was kind of like, wow, how did that even happen? And in his mind's like, okay, well, all I got to do is push a black guy just like I do the white guy, and he's going to get the same reaction. And then turns out, no, that's not necessarily true. But yeah, you're right. This is really, I don't want to get ahead of anything, but this is a strange angle to go back and watch, because for context, this is 1990 when Snowman returns and this angle happens on television. That you didn't have the internet. You had a very, very minute section of smart fans who read dirt sheets, who really,
And
mean,
I
there
was
was,
part of that. So
yeah,
we're
you were
looking
one of
at
those guys.
we're looking
But
at 80s.
there were people that are like, I know
Yeah.
this ain't real, but they didn't know how
No.
or why or any of that. So the way this all transpired, to go back and watch it now, being my age, knowing that I saw it back then, thinking about how I felt about it then compared to what I know now, it's a very, very bizarre angle how they booked it, because it was almost catering to smart fans, because it's like they did everything down to the matches they had a certain way, very different than any of the work stuff. And it felt like they were trying to make you feel like, oh shit, this is real. This isn't your normal wrestling stuff. And that's just something they didn't do back then.
You're right. I never thought about that, but they really did. That they were doing this angle. You, like you said, kind of tailored to the smart crew of people that were watching it. But I think mainly because Memphis being Memphis, and what he did to. All right, so he left. He was in '86, left, went to Mid South, came back. He tried to get a job back with. Called Jerry Jarrett, Eddie Marlin. This is all in this interview also. But in Lawler, he even says, I called Lawler. Well, he tries to get a job back for Memphis Wrestling, and they say, no, we don't want you because, number one, he was green as grass when he left. He left them without notice. They were big about you got to fill your dates, blah, blah, blah. And then he went on local radio stations. Was it K97 maybe? And a couple others talking about how racist Memphis Wrestling was and how and how they wouldn't let a black guy be pushed. And he was for shoot saying all of this. It reminded me of the Randy Savage thing where Savage would do it on his show talking about Lawler and Dundee were scared of him. What do you think when what if something like that happened these days? They were even on local radio in Memphis, would they try to tailor to this guy?
I mean, they might because, shoot angles have, over the years have become, part of what they do. But like I said, back then, it's just really bizarre. And another thing I didn't remember till I went back and watched this in the last couple of days is on TV, from the kayfabe perspective, Lawler was a heel at the time.
He was a heel. Yeah, he was going feuding he was getting ready to go that Monday night where
Kerry Von Erich, right?
Kerry Von Erich, right.
So he was a heel. So in this, what I think, looking back on it, Memphis was kind of on its ass in a lot of ways. They weren't drawing well at the time. And I guess with Lawler as a heel and there being such a large black population in Memphis, and they kind of had lost those fans over time. They lost most of their fans anyway, but from what I hear, they had lost a lot of the black fans because, it just wasn't a good time financially for people, and people just weren't buying tickets to go see wrestling. So I think they had hoped the black fans and fans in general would rally behind Snowman, because he was sitting out in the crowd in the studio. He was sitting in the front row of the studio amongst everybody. And I guess the hope was that they would rally behind him and come to see him take the title from Lawler and take down the racist Eddie Marlin and Lawler. And we'll talk about this a little more once you show it, because
all right,
everything about this is really strange. Like, pay attention as you're watching this to Eddie Marlin in this. The way he
well
conducted
done.
himself is very weird.
Yeah, and I want to tell you, when we get back, I want to tell you my reaction to this back in the day. So I remember actually talking to Meltzer about this because I was Meltzer's snitch for Memphis Wrestling, and I remember talking to him about this. So here we go. Let's watch this. Hopefully we won't get into any copyright trouble here.
That he was no longer a champion at all, and that I was the true world heavyweight champion.
We're doing an interview here. Right now. This guy's out here, look, Lawler's out here.
Wait just a minute, Snowman. That's right. This is our wrestling program. You have no business being on it unless you contact me or some of the officials. And
I'm not contacting you anymore. That's all I do is contact you.
let me tell you something. I'm not going to come in here and interfere with this show. I had you right. This man is not no world champion. He's got the belt to prove it. Don't make no difference. He got the belt, but he ain't never actually beat me. He don't want to wrestle me. Who are you for him to beat? Let me tell you something. You coming out and interfering with my business now, and I've got something you need to hear. I booked you in the CWA everywhere, and you refused to make your booking. You only wanted to wrestle Jerry Lawler. That's who I'm going to wrestle. I'm going to wrestle Jerry Lawler, and that's who I want. I come out here to give him an open challenge. You're not challenging him, you're challenging my company, and I'm not going to put up with it. Now, I'll put you on the card Monday night, Snowman, but you won't be in against him, you'll be against somebody else. You wait till I get through, and then you can talk. You can work your way up just like all the rest of them. I'm not working my way up anyway. Well, then you're not getting a title shot. Look, man, y'all been doing me wrong around here for years. Let me tell you something. That's all right. I got some people here from Scores Productions. I don't care who. They know exactly what I'm talking about, and everything I've been trying to do in the town. I don't care who you got. Look, I've been to you. I called Lawler. Yeah. I called him up and told him what I want. I told him. You asked me. You called him up and I asked you, and he hired behind you. You can have a match Monday night. You can pick your opponent, but not Lawler. You work your way up, and then you'll get a title match. I hear what you're saying. Lawler is not these people's champion. That's what I'm saying. Well, what it is, he's got the belt. Hey, you can just get right out of here, or you can sit down. I'm not going to look. Wait, hold. Let me tell you something, Lawler. It's one more thing. Hold up for a minute. Let me hear this. Hold it. Let me tell you something, Dave Brown. Lawler, you are not a champion, and I'm sick and tired of you putting down on my people. I'm sick and tired of you putting on the black people. You understand me? All this stuff about welfare checks, food stamps. I'm sick and tired of you, boy. Hey, no, wait, move out of the way. I know it's wrong. You have it behind you. You know what it is, Lord? It's because I'm black, that's all. You trying to make it racial where you get all the blacks on your side. But all the blacks are not on your side, Snowman, because we've got black wrestlers. You don't have one black wrestler can take this man out. KYD came in, he's the top. KYD ain't nothing. Rick Brown is black and he's nothing. So your benefit, so you're thinking it's nothing. Let me tell you something. Hey, you can either sit down and shut up. I'm not saying that. I'm not gonna do nothing till you hear from my people over here. Hey, wait, come here. Let me say a word. Let him talk. He ain't got no business. I know he ain't got no business. Hey, let me tell you something. No, hey, come here. Come over here. I thought you came out here to do some talking. Move out of the way. Let him talk. Hey, listen. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you what your problem is. What is my problem? I'm going to tell you what it is. You want to come out here, and yeah, go ahead, take your shirt off, show your big muscle up body. You want to come out here and try to get something. Hey, Eddie,
All right. That was the gist of it with him coming out. And to me was, I remember talking to Dave after this. I knew it was a work, but I was just in shock of how good it was and how it made all of my friends say, "What was he doing out on television?" And here's a guy who walks out on TV. Now, here was the criticism of Snowman of the guys in the business. All right. There is a certain type of guy in the wrestling business that believes his hype. He believes that when he beats somebody, he actually is beating that person. And you're thinking to yourself, and Gene knows this, but if you're listening to this, you're a BT, that's ridiculous. It's all the work. No. They think they're the reason they're champion. They've got that belt. They won it. They're the champion. And he was that guy. So what was your thoughts? You said some things about it, but seeing him out there and saying it's black, it's all about being black, blah, blah, blah. Now, that in that time period, you could accept that. There's something we didn't say a few minutes ago, is during that time period, this angle for sure could be real, because there's all kinds of undertones about blacks and whether they got the push they deserved in Memphis.
Oh yeah, and there was certainly a case to be made on whether they didn't. Now later, I don't remember if it was that clip or the next week, but at some point in there, the only thing I didn't like about it, watching it now, I'm always frustrated in angles where there's all this yelling going on and you really can't make sense of a lot of it. But then again, that helps put over the fact that it's not, supposed to be happening or whatever.
Right.
But at some point, Lawler points out, King Cobra beat me for the title. He's black, so now what?
Oh, yeah. I didn't play all that, but yeah.
It's kind of like, you kind of throw that out there. But
I got a black friend. I can't be racist, so I got a black
it was
friend,
that old thing, And so it was very, like I say, in the time period, it was an interesting way to go about it, because with Lawler being the heel, it could by design, rally, black fans be like, hey, I want to go out and see this guy beat Lawler, because Lawler's, being an asshole these days, and, we're behind Snowman. But then it also, deep down, people love Lawler. And deep down, a lot of people in that time frame especially were just like, hey, I'm going to support the white guy, So, like, you're also kind of messing with the dynamic of his heel run, because there was going to be people like, who's this guy to come here and call Jerry Lawler racist, And he's calling my favorite promotion, USWA, a bunch of racists, and they're holding down the black guy and all this crap. So it was a lot of weird dynamics going on. Watching it now from a different point of view than I did back then as strictly a fan, as somebody who's been on shows and ran shows and different things. Eddie Marlin, I don't know, like at times, like he needed to let Lawler handle it more than he was like bowing up on Snowman. I'm like, okay, why was Snowman not just knock his old ass out at this point? Like he's getting way too. It seemed to me that either Eddie Marlin's a lot better actor than I gave him credit for, or he actually got half hot a couple of times during that whole ordeal, because he seemed to kind of literally take offense to some of the things that Snowman was saying. But I think it was a pretty smart angle for the time, because they needed something that was going to draw. They needed something different, and for the people who were somewhat smart or kind of bought into like, oh, this ain't supposed to happen, this is some guy that's really showing up, it might make you go buy a ticket that week to see, hey, what's going to happen.
I agree. And I agree 100%. And you mentioned something talking about the white people would then start, with Lawler because it was a black guy. I'm going to take a quick commercial break here. If you're doing the video, you don't see a commercial, and it will be right back. I'm going to tell you why a lot of white people were jumped on Lawler's bandwagon here. So right after the commercial break. All right, we're back. I want to bring you into I want to bring you into a white Southern household in the 80s. Come on, Gene. Come on in here. My dad was the biggest racist ever. I'm sorry. I'm just going to tell you. He was a huge racist. He said the N-word all the time. It's one of the sweetest guys you'll ever meet, but he was a racist, all right? So if he was interpreting this and watching this, the Snowman was a troublemaker. No black man should come on to that television show and tell them how to run their show. He was a troublemaker, and troublemakers shouldn't be rewarded. And that's why you had a lot of the white fans jump back over to Lawler. And it kind of didn't work as good as they thought it was going to work, kind of thing.
Plus, they didn't know this guy, or if they did know him, he was the killer last time he was here. He was a heel. I don't know. He didn't come off like a star. He didn't come off like somebody for them to really get behind, other than they're just going to be like, hey, this black guy's getting done wrong, I'm getting behind him. And that's just not a fight most white people were picking up back then. I know in recent times, you had a Black Lives Matter rally in Coleman that was all white people, but that wasn't happening in 1990.
No, not at all. Like I said, yeah. You're talking about, and I said a household. I don't want to throw my mama under the bus because my mom wasn't racist at all, but Dad was that way, and
but Dad was the head of the household back in them days, so it's not like your mom's going to pick that fight. You know what I mean?
Right.
She's going to pull you aside and go, Brian, that's not right. You should
right. Exactly. It's exactly what happened. So
we were all there back in the day. We ain't got we don't have to tell that.
I want to share this clip, and I'm not going to share any more clips, I don't think. But this clip made me feel very uncomfortable. I want you to watch this. This is part of the angle. And as soon as I start playing it, you're going to realize what I'm talking about making me feel uncomfortable.
Go ahead and talk.
Well, like I said, I really don't have anything to say. It's just
Why you don't have anything
I've
to say?
wrestled in this organization. I wrestled in other organizations, and belts and matches are won in the ring.
Let me ask you this. In the length of time you've been with the CWA, the USWA, anytime, anywhere, any place, and be honest with me, because there's millions of people watching. Has anything ever come up that would be, in your mind, racially motivated? Just answer it truthfully. Don't lie.
With the organization, no. Every individual have problems with another wrestler, but with the organization, no.
So that part made me feel uncomfortable because I really like King Cobra. I've met him a couple of times, super nice guy, but it made me feel uncomfortable. Like, was he going to actually say, oh, yeah, they treated me, they were racist against me. What do you think he was going to say? And he came off in this angle as token, as in, look, like you said, look, here he is. He's our best friend. There's no way Memphis wrestling could be racist because, well, we made him champ. That was almost like that's what they said.
And it's like Eddie standing over, like, tell him how good we treat you. Tell them how we've never been racist to you. Go on, tell them.
Right,
you like your job, don't you?
I just felt real uncomfortable.
Here's another aspect, and let me know if I'm reading too much into this or if you felt this way too. But here now, beyond the promos and the angles on television, where I felt like they're also trying to work the people who are smart and think they know better. If you go back and watch the Jerry Lawler Snowman matches, at least the ones that are on YouTube, they did not work those matches like your normal wrestling match. They didn't circle each other, lock up, and do all the normal. They tried to work it like a half-ass fight. I mean, you go watch it. They just come out like they're boxing at the first. They're swinging punches. They're taking each other down in grapples. Like, it looked like early UFC. Well, poorly executed early UFC type stuff. They did not have a worked. I mean, it was worked, but they did it in a way to make it look like they weren't cooperating, like they were trying to actually.
Oh, that's
fight,
exactly what they wanted to do.
Wrestling match, because then you can turn around and watch another match where, like, Snowman's wrestling Jeff Gaylord, and it looks like any other match on Memphis TV you've ever seen.
5 stars, by the way, 5 stars.
And then you go watch Lawler and Snowman. This is a completely different animal, and I've always, like, I didn't really put that together at the time, but looking back on it, I always hated angles to this day that they handle differently to where you're supposed to go, oh,
but this is real.
This is real.
The other's not real, but this...
Yeah, you cheapen everything else on the card
you
because, like, oh, that was all wrestling crap. Oh, they're really fighting, and it looks like crap most of the time. And then, of course, later you have the Leon Spinks aspect of it and all this. But
we have 3 matches with Snowman. He actually wins the title after the 3 chances. Wins the title from Lawler Unified title. He's the champ. He does some more matches. I think he wrestles Lawler one more time that year, and then he does a couple matches. One with Brian Lee, and then Lawler goes feuding with somebody else, and then he just disappears. He just fucking leaves. He's gone. And on from August 13th on, he's gone. We don't see the Snowman any. Marlon, I had this queued up, but I'm not going to play it. Marlon comes out and says, hey, we don't have a champion. But you know this story, right? That the Snowman went back to the radio stations with the title and tried to tell everybody that he went and beat up the white man, but they're still racist and they won't book him anymore. And this is this lore? Is this just fables, or is this shoot? He sold the belt at the pawn shop. He pawned it off. And the rumor, I guess I can't get in trouble because he's Eddie Crawford, the Snowman, has passed away. But it was rumored he did it for drugs. That's what I was told.
I was going to say there's 2 different versions.
Okay, tell me the 2 different versions.
Google Snowman Unified Belt or whatever, you'll see messages from various message boards. But there's one version that Snowman went and pawned it at a pawn shop in Memphis. And there's another version that he actually went to a well-known crack house in Memphis and traded the belt for a bunch of drugs. And that Lawler himself or he sent someone who went and bought the belt back from said drug dealer or pawn shop, whichever version you believe. Then there's another version that he kept the belt, and eventually he sold it to Milliken or traded it to Milliken, and that's how Milliken ended up with it again, which is how Lawler ended up with it again. In later years, like, because when I was wrestling in Corinth in like 1999 to 2000-ish, Snowman came and worked a couple of shows there.
I was excited to ask you about this because
I remember Don Bass ribbing him in the dressing room. There was Rodney's CWA title was sitting over there on the table, and Don Bass is like, "Y'all better put that up. Eddie will go pawn that thing, and then the Snowman was like, "Oh, shut the hell up, Donnie. You know I didn't do that. You know that wasn't true." And then everybody just started like, because it was him and Brick and Doug Gilbert, and I think Tommy Gilbert was there that night, and they all just started laughing. So at that point, I'm like, okay, are they laughing because they know it's not true, or are they laughing because they know he's
because they know it's
really
true, right?
But it was interesting to see that referenced by like 5 guys who were, big time Memphis guys who was all there for it, and in the middle of it all.
Did he seem to be working with you guys? Was he working? Did he have any problems on the show?
He was only there for a couple of weeks. He was super nice. Like, he shook everybody's hand. He was really polite, and I mean, nobody had any problems. I forget who he worked. I think he worked Brick House because Brick was heel at the time. I think he worked Brick House once or twice, and maybe did something with Doug. I don't really remember because we're downstairs in that dressing room. Really didn't watch the show, so I don't remember. But because when they said, "Hey, Snowman's gonna be here next week," I was like, "Oh man, what's this gonna be?" Like, is he gonna have a chip on his shoulder? Does he have an attitude now, or like? But he was really, really nice guy. Because, like you said, I remember him. He went on those radio stations. There were commercials coming on TV of him with the unified belt doing commercials.
Oh, I forgot all about that. He did
loan places and stuff, whatever it was.
I forgot about that. Yeah,
he made a big deal. I'm assuming, though, if you believe everything you've heard about him, and going back to what you said earlier about how he believed he really won it. I mean, however you make that work in your head, they called a finish and you walked out the champion, but. I'm guessing probably when it came time to drop the belt, that's when he stopped showing up because, Eddie Marlin in that speech on TV said, he missed 6 scheduled title defenses. And the story's always been that he just all of a sudden stopped showing up for bookings.
He just quit. Yeah.
I'm guessing they're like, "Hey, man, it's time for you to drop the belt." And he's like, "No, I just won't come back."
They did the thing with Leon Spinks. Leon actually did a thing with Lawler. Right after that, Snowman was part of some of that out there with Leon. Leon was sitting in an interview. Hey, Leon came to Jonesboro, Leon Spinks, and I never got his autograph. I cannot believe that. Was in Jonesboro on that Saturday before Monday night. So after they found out he was going to be there on the Monday night, he came to Jonesboro to practice, really, to see what the crowd would do and everything. Got lots of heat in Jonesboro, but it was that flip-flop thing. You don't want to cheer Lawler because he's a heel, but are we going to cheer Lawler? I reached out to Jeff Osborne, who does some stuff with Lawler on a regular basis, and did Cassette Wrestling News, and he did some UFC stuff. It was not UFC, but yeah, he did work for UFC one time as a commentator. I'm trying to think of what else. Hook and Shoot. He did Hook and Shoot in the Evansville Coliseum. He said that it was the closest ever he saw of a riot was when Spinks and Snowman was there. So they were supposed to be baby faces, but that crowd did not want to cheer them and thought they were, like I said about what my dad said, they were troublemakers and we weren't going to get on their side. And so it's kind of crazy to think that, it's just almost like who's your favorite wrestler, and it doesn't matter, color or anything. You just like the person for a reason. Now it's not like, this wouldn't work now, I don't think.
Well, a little more context there for people who don't know who Leon Spinks is.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
He beat Muhammad Ali, and Muhammad Ali, we talked about JYD in the wrestling circles. Muhammad Ali was one of the first athletes, especially as a boxer, who transcended race. I mean, everybody loved Muhammad Ali. I mean, people
Ali.
Who were some of the biggest racists you ever met in your life.
My dad loved Ali. My dad loved Ali.
Loved Muhammad Ali. So, besides, he had heat, I'm sure, with fans like that because he's the one that beat Muhammad Ali, and people didn't appreciate that.
They would go to close to drive-ins. My dad would, to watch the Ali fights, so he was a huge Ali fan, but you're right. He was one of those guys, and Leon beat him. Snowman came into Memphis, all the lore, the thing about what's going on with the title and all that always become part of Memphis history. And then we never saw him again. I didn't see him on any of the independents, and I met a lot of guys during that time. I never met the guy. He was never. I wasn't. I actually was not able to go backstage when Leon was there, which was very unusual for me in Jonesboro. I was able to go backstage, but they kept me from going backstage that night because of Leon being back there. But let me just say, he had a very storied a storied story, whatever you want to call it, in Memphis. But have you seen? I don't want to get so deep into this, but have you seen the history his son had?
No. I remember that. I remember his name being in the news, but I don't remember.
His son was Xavier Crawford. He was said to have been, and this may have changed, one of the best or the best football player to ever come out of Memphis area high school ball. He played for Memphis State. If he's still alive, he's still in prison for rape. 2 or 3 things where he said he did it, and he raped them with objects like barbecue pork forks and stuff like that. And spent a bunch of time in jail and still there. His son, I don't know whatever happened to him, but he was good in football too. Xavier's son. Xavier was the X-Man. Do you remember that? Do you remember the X-Man, Xavier Crawford? I know you're not a sports guy, but
no, I'm not. But I do remember. Yeah, like I say, I remember that being in the news and hearing that.
But it was just, and it's just one of those things where it's all this stuff was going on. Now, I wanted to ask this question before we ask the question, because I did enjoy. I loved this angle as a kid. And so you're talking about 1990. I was 18. I was 22, 20, 21, 22, 23, something like that. So I was kind of in the business because I thought I was anyway, because I got the sheets. And I took photographs. But there's always been this underlining in I know if you're not from the Memphis area and you haven't worked around the Memphis guys, you've never heard this, that some of the guys that are in Memphis wrestling are racist. And I've heard, even some of them use the N-word in the dressing room. Do you think that was one of the reasons, number one, that they thought this angle was going to work so good? Because there was a bunch of racists sitting around thinking, let's try to get a black over.
I think so. I think they definitely, like I say, because of the time and because of the place and who were the people involved. Because Lawler, God love him, had said some things on TV over the years that could be construed as a racist that still live out there in YouTube land. Yeah, I'm sure they definitely thought that people were like, oh yeah, it's real because these guys are racist. And, and I heard, and I spent a lot of time in dressing rooms with Brickhouse Brown, and I heard him make reference at time, different times of all them racist ass so-and-so, or, if this person was in charge, then I knew, I wasn't gonna be making any money and I wasn't gonna be able because they were racist and stuff like that. But yeah, and it's funny, since we're on this topic, I'm gonna slip this in real quick just because I know you'll be amused by this, and I know some of your listeners who get this reference will be amused. I told a friend that we were recording this morning, and they go, really, what's the topic? And I said, Snowman. And he goes, oh, the original Johnny Dotson.
Oh my God. No, not at all. So
I was like,
okay,
first it took me a minute, but I'm like, oh, guy saying that everybody in Memphis is racist. Okay.
Right.
Maybe. But anyway.
It's true.
Shout out to Johnny.
You're talking about that of us talking about people being racist, and Lawler was racist. Well, you didn't say that. You said that.
No, I didn't say Lawler was racist. Make sure we clarify that. I'm just saying.
No, Gene did not say that.
You can find lines and things he said in promos, like, go back and watch some of the promos he did against Rocky Johnson in the early days.
Oh, there's some artwork. And I reached out to somebody about this. It does exist. I even have a friend, and I'm not going to say who it is, who has this artwork that I'm fixing to mention, autographed by Jerry Lawler. There's a picture of Pork Chop Cash with these big, huge lips that he drew on it and eating watermelon. And Lawler used that and put it in the programs and stuff when
Oh
he was
wow.
ill. So, yes, folks, it was a different time. It was not politically correct. And at times, I don't know if Memphis was ever politically correct. I didn't see, I personally, the guys that I hung around with in the Memphis, none, they're like Perry Jackson. He wrestled as Action Jackson. He hung around. It was me, him, Dutch, Undertaker, and let me see. I don't know. There was a guy that worked as a sheik something. That was all. We were all together a couple of times, but there was never that he's black. I don't like Perry or something like that.
Yeah.
Perry and Undertaker were like best friends, still best friends. I think he was in Undertaker's wedding. But I never saw that. I don't know, I don't know where it was, but but I've heard many people say they didn't get the push that they got because of their color. And I want to agree with them to a certain extent, but and I keep saying you and I know, but there's things that me and you know that people are listening to this have no idea that they didn't push anybody. Jerry Lawler, Bill Dundee were the stars. They pushed Jeff Jarrett, Brian Christopher, and maybe PG-13. And can you get a common denominator with all three of those people? They're Lawler Dundee kind of thing. Wolfie D just got lucky.
It's not race, it's nepotism. It's not
it's called nepotism. And that was the last people, I said this many times, the last people that were ever pushed in Memphis wrestling. Kevin White, and when I started the website, got a really good push against Dundee once, and he got almost 100,000 people watched that TV in that angle for like 2 or 3 weeks in a row. But I mean, it wasn't like a long push or anything like that, but they didn't push anybody. So you can say they didn't push white, they didn't push black, they didn't push anybody. So I mean, I agree they didn't push black guys, but they didn't. The thing with King Cobra, and I'd have to talk to King Cobra. I'd like to bring him on and talk to him. I do know he was very happy when they put the belt on him. He felt as if it was an honor, and it was, kind of. I'm a black guy, but this has also got something to do with, I've had so many years in the business, but I've had people tell me many times they put King Cobra got the belt put on him because he was black.
Yeah, that's what I always heard. The opposite of that, they're like, "Oh yeah, they just wanted to put it on a black guy." But King Cobra had a very unique deal. What was it? He had a good job. Was it FedEx or whatever it was that, he just did TV. He just did the Coliseum. He didn't do any of the loops or any of that. They worked around his job, and that's why he never went anywhere beyond Memphis after a certain point because he could do that and still have his good career that he had.
I don't know how true this is, and if I ever bring him on, I'll ask him. He had a great shoot job, as you said, and he invented something.
I remember reading that. I don't know what it was, but I remember reading it because I read a really good article on him a few years back, and
he didn't miss a day and
confirmed all that.
Yeah, 20-something years or 30-something years, he hadn't missed a day of work. He had invented something that actually made him a millionaire. And so it was a piece of one of the machines he used at work. He improved that machine, got a patent on it, and they paid him a bunch of money for it. But cool. Man, if he's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, so humble. And as Dustin's told the story, is they walked in the Wrestle Center when they were putting the Wrestle Center together, and all these guys are cleaning up the Wrestle Center, the posse and everybody. They're trying to get it ready. And he's right there with them. King Cobra's right there with a broom in his hand, helping get it all cleaned up. And they was just like, man, you don't have to do this. You go, yeah, it's got to be done kind of thing. So it's just a really good guy. All right, let's answer it, and we'll go to the Patreon section there. Was it really that good, Gene?
Snowman, in my opinion, wasn't that good. If you look at the matches, even his promo. Like I found a couple of promos of his, and he wasn't a great talker by any stretch. Like he called himself Daddy Whipped Cream in one of them. Like what is that? What are you talking about? Is that your stripper name or something? Like what are we doing?
That's what I'm gonna call you from now on.
It might be more appropriate for a fat guy like me. But I mean, I like what they were trying to do, I guess, as far as just invent something that would create an issue to where they hopefully could draw. Me personally, I don't think it was that good. I didn't enjoy all the yelling and bickering in the promos, and I wasn't a fan of it then, and going back and watching it again, like, no, not really a fan of it.
I was a huge fan of it as a kid. I thought it was, and part of it was because I was going from being just a fan for so many years into being a smart fan, getting sheets of all kinds and reporting today, Meltzer. I think it was part of it. I felt like, oh man, this could be a shoot. This could be a shoot. That's what I like about it. I still like it, but it really makes me feel uncomfortable a couple places. And I don't know if it makes me feel uncomfortable because of that I'm older and I've lived through a lot of stuff, or it's just the idea that it was just, even then, it was just so wrong. I mean, and not wrong in the sense that, let me rephrase that. It was so correct what they were saying. That's what makes me feel uncomfortable today.
Yeah.
If you go back in that time period, as we talked, everything the Snowman said was truth. It was truth. And that's part of the shoot part of it. And that it makes me uncomfortable thinking about, well, we did have a lot of that going on, and it could be for real kind of thing. So, yeah, I still there. The Snowman, still part of Memphis history. Gene, I want to thank you for coming on. I mean, every 2 years, I need you to come on and do a podcast.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Same bad time, same bad channel.
2025.
All episodes, Memphis in May. Best little wrestling podcast in the business. Be there. And as everyone knows, and Gene knows, I love my mama. Remember, all episodes, Memphis in May. Go to stspod.club